When the galaxy first learned that humans existed, the reaction wasn't what humanity had expected. Instead of welcoming them or trying to understand them, the powerful species of the Galactic Council viewed humans as unpredictable newcomers who did not belong among the stars. A single misunderstanding during early contact changed everything. One wrong signal, one poorly translated message, and one fearful decision by alien diplomats set a future in motion that no one could undo. The decision was harsh and rushed. Humans were ordered to leave known space. They were not asked what they wanted. They were not given time to argue. They were simply told to go. They could choose any direction, as long as it was away from the well-established worlds of the older species. The Council believed this would protect the balance. In truth, it only showed how little they understood humanity's spirit. The fleets that carried the last humans away from Earth were old, crowded, and not ready for deep space journeys. Many believed they wouldn't survive. The stars ahead looked cold and endless, and behind them was everything they knew. People whispered among themselves, wondering how a misunderstanding had made them the only species pushed out of the galaxy's heart. Some cried quietly. Some prayed. Some stayed silent, holding their fear inside. But even in that moment of loss, something else began forming. The humans on those ships didn't give up their hope. They didn't collapse under the weight of exile. Instead, they made a quiet promise to themselves. If the galaxy wanted them gone, then they would go. But they would not vanish. They would endure. They would survive the darkness, no matter how far they had to travel. The first years of exile were the hardest. Supplies ran low. Some ships were too damaged to keep going. People had to learn new ways to live in places no one had ever explored. Planets that looked promising turned out to be dangerous. Others were so cold or so hot that even breathing outside was impossible. At times it felt like the galaxy had abandoned them to places not meant for life, but humans adapted. If a world was too cold, they built underground shelters that used geothermal heat. If a world was too hot, they created floating habitats above the burning ground. If food was scarce, they grew new crops from scratch, turning barren soil into something that could live. Every hardship forced them to think, experiment, and invent. Every challenge shaped them into something tougher than they had ever been on Earth. Yet the emotional wound of exile did not heal quickly. Many older humans remembered the blue oceans of Earth and wondered if they would ever see something so beautiful again. Children grew up hearing stories of a planet they would never touch, a sky they would never breathe. Earth slowly became a memory, then a legend, and finally something close to a myth. People kept it alive in old songs, old stories, and old recordings. But the real world felt farther away with each passing year. Still, the humans did not break. They pushed further outward, deeper into territories the Council never bothered to map. Some journeys took years. Some took decades. The galaxy had turned its back on them, but the stars ahead did not care who they were. They simply existed, waiting to be discovered. One day, after a long journey past a drifting nebula, the exiled fleet found a star system unlike any other. Its planets were rough, but they were stable. The system was rich in minerals. There were wide asteroid belts that could become natural resource fields. There were moons with strange ancient ruined structures from civilizations long gone. The system was isolated by thick clouds of cosmic dust, making it nearly invisible from normal routes. To the human leaders, it looked like a place where they could finally stop running. The fleet settled there, and life began again. People built shelters, then towns, then busy cities. Old ships were turned into the foundations of new stations. Families created new traditions. Festivals began. Schools opened. Children finally grew up without feeling like the sky was something trying to crush them. For the first time since exile, humanity felt a sense of home, But even as they built their new world, they never forgot why they were here. They remembered the day the galaxy sent them away without listening to their side of the story. They remembered the fear, the confusion, and the unfair judgment. That memory shaped them quietly, deep inside. It didn't turn them bitter. It didn't make them violent. But it did make them determined that, if the galaxy thought humans were weak, then humans would prove otherwise. If the Council believed they would fade into dust, then humans would show they could rise from it. And if the other species believed they were forgotten, then humans would show that being forgotten was sometimes the greatest advantage. As the generations passed, the humans in exile transformed. They were no longer the people who had once lived on Earth. They had grown into something sharper, more focused, more united. Hardship became their teacher. Isolation became their forge. The quiet corners of space became their workshop. And without anyone watching, they started building something bigger. The first major step was unity. The scattered human colonies decided to stop living separately. They created a shared council where representatives from every colony could speak. Their goal was simple: protect each other and grow together. They called this new bond their silent alliance, because no one outside the hidden region knew it existed. Then came industry. Humans turned asteroid belts into massive mining fields. They built shipyards inside hollowed moons where no outside sensors could detect them. Old alien ruins became study sites for their brightest engineers and researchers. They learned from every material they found, every relic they discovered, every problem they faced. With each achievement, they stepped farther away from the fragile exiles they once were. While the rest of the galaxy forgot them, humans kept moving forward. They taught their children that exile wasn't an ending but a beginning. They didn't encourage anger or revenge. They encouraged strength, unity, and preparation. They believed that one day, whether by choice or fate, they would meet the galaxy again. And when that day came, humans would stand tall not as castaways, but as a civilization that had risen on its own. Sometimes on quiet nights, elders would sit outside and look at the stars. They wondered if any of the old species remembered humanity at all. Most likely, they didn't. To the Council, humans were a brief mistake from long ago. A small problem that had been pushed away. An event so minor that new generations of alien leaders probably didn't even know it had happened. But to humans, the memory stayed alive. It wasn't a wound anymore. It was a reminder. A reminder of how quickly others could judge. A reminder of how strong humans could become when they had to survive alone. A reminder that no civilization, no matter how forgotten, had to stay hidden forever. The galaxy believed humanity had disappeared. But humanity had not disappeared. They had simply gone where no one bothered to look. And in that quiet, untouched region of space, far from every map and every sensor, they grew. They didn't plan revenge. They didn't plan conquest. They planned a future, a stronger one, a united one, a human one. And as the generations continued to rise, the hidden empire they were creating began to take shape. Life in the hidden star system slowly changed the way humans thought about themselves. In the beginning, their only goal was survival. They built shelters wherever they could, repaired their old ships, and tried to grow food in soil that had never supported life before. But once they learned how to live without fear of losing everything, their minds opened to new possibilities. They began to think about what they could build, not just what they could save. The first sign that they were growing stronger was when small groups from different human colonies started visiting each other. At first, it was only for trade. One colony might have stronger crops, while another had rare metals. Another had discovered a new way to recycle water more efficiently. People traveled in slow cargo ships, sharing ideas and helping one another. These trips were simple, But they created a sense of connection the humans had been missing for years. Over time, these visits became routine. People started writing messages between worlds, sending updates, sketches, ideas, and sometimes just messages of encouragement. Even though they were scattered across several planets, the humans slowly began to feel united again. They didn't see each other often, but they remembered that they came from the same place, shared the same history, and carried the same hopes. Life remained difficult, but it became a manageable struggle instead of a desperate one. Children who were born on these new worlds grew up unaware of the old pain of exile. They didn't know the bitterness of being pushed away from the galaxy's center. For them, this hidden region was simply home. Their laughter filled the towns, their curiosity filled the schools, and their new ideas filled the workshops. They grew up not as exiles, but as pioneers. And as the children grew, the adults realized something important. They could not survive as isolated planets forever. They needed something stronger. They needed a system that would protect them, connect them, and help them grow into a civilization. So, the leaders of each human colony gathered for the first time. It wasn't a grand event. There were no gold decorations or huge stages. Just a group of people sitting around a shared holographic table, far from the eyes of the galaxy. The discussions lasted for weeks. Some worried about becoming too visible. Others worried about staying too hidden. Some wanted to focus on building technological strength, while others wanted to focus on growing food, creating culture, or preserving what was left of old Earth traditions. But in the end, they agreed on a simple truth. If they didn't stand together, they would fall separately. So they formed a quiet bond, a cooperation that wasn't flashy or loud. They didn't call it an empire or a federation. They simply called it the collective. This new agreement changed everything. Suddenly, resources flowed more smoothly. Knowing they had support from each other, colonies took on bigger projects. They dug deeper mines, built stronger habitats, and created schools that trained young minds not just for survival, but for invention. The collective didn't feel like a ruling council. It felt like family far apart in distance, but close in purpose. As decades passed, the humans started exploring the surrounding systems. Their early ships were slow and old, but they worked. They discovered planets full of unusual minerals, moons with frozen oceans, and asteroids packed with useful materials. They mapped the region carefully, marking safe routes and dangerous ones. The collective kept all these maps secret. They didn't want the galaxy to know where they were or what they were becoming. Eventually, exploration turned into settlement. New colonies formed. Many were small, just a few hundred people at first, but they grew. Some worlds had harsh storms that forced people to build underground. Others had strong winds that inspired floating habitats tethered to the surface. Each colony had its own personality, shaped by the environment and the people living there. But no matter how different they were, they always stayed connected through the collective. In these early years, humans discovered something remarkable. The hidden region wasn't empty. Deep inside certain planets, under ancient layers of rock, they found strange ruins. These structures were old, so old that even the most advanced scanners couldn't guess their exact age. The ruins weren't from any species the humans knew about. They weren't built by the council races, and they didn't match any known style of architecture. Many humans believed they had found traces of a forgotten civilization. Some ruins held strange machines that no longer worked. Others contained symbols carved into walls that no one could translate. Scientists and engineers across the colonies came together to study these relics. They didn't try to copy them blindly. They simply tried to understand how they worked, what materials they used, and what ideas they were based on. Some discoveries were small but helpful. New alloys, stronger building materials, more efficient energy storage. Other discoveries were mysterious and required years of research. But each one pushed humanity a little further. Every time a human scientist solved a puzzle, they felt as if they were shaking hands with a civilization from the distant past. It reminded them that even forgotten species could leave powerful legacies behind, just like humans were doing now. Back in their settlements, industries grew quietly. Humans didn't build giant factories where noise filled the air. Instead, they designed efficient production sites inside asteroids and moons so they could remain hidden from wandering alien ships. They used automation to reduce waste. They built inside rocky shells so that their signals stayed faint and unnoticed. It wasn't secrecy born of fear. It was practicality. They wanted time to grow without outside interference. This was the birth of their hidden strength. While the galaxy believed humans were long gone, humans were becoming one of the most resourceful species in the region. Their shipyards became smoother, their designs more advanced. The first ships made in the hidden region were small, compact, and quiet. They didn't shine or boast big engines like other species' ships. They were practical, built for long flights, heavy work, and exploration. People took pride in these vessels. Every ship felt like a symbol of their survival, a message that said, "We are still here." Pilots who flew them carried the same pride. They traveled between colonies, delivering supplies, helping settlers, and strengthening the bond between worlds. Sometimes they flew through storms or debris, but they trusted in the human-made technology that kept them safe. The collective kept growing. New institutions formed places where people studied science, engineering, medicine, and even art. Humans understood that survival wasn't enough. They wanted a deep, lasting culture, something future generations could look at and feel proud of. They built theaters, music halls, and open-air gathering spaces. On some worlds, people painted murals of Earth's oceans. On others, they carved figures into rock to show the long journey of humanity. Despite being hidden, they lived full lives. They celebrated festivals based on the unique stars above each world. They created new traditions, new foods, new songs. Slowly, humanity changed into something more unified and more imaginative. People no longer thought of themselves only as exiles. They thought of themselves as builders of a future no one else could control. But behind this peaceful growth, there was always a soft echo of caution. Humans knew the galaxy had once judged them harshly. They knew misunderstandings could easily happen again. So they remained careful. Their communication networks were hidden behind layers of encryption. Their trading routes were quiet, and their flight paths avoided borders the Council might patrol. Not because they feared discovery, but because they wanted to choose the moment they revealed themselves. Generations passed. The old humans who had seen Earth with their own eyes slowly faded away. Their memories became stories told at gatherings, sometimes making children cry, sometimes making them smile. People didn't forget Earth, but they also didn't cling to its memory as something painful. Instead, they used it as a guide. Earth reminded them of what they had lost, but also of what they could build again. By now, the hidden region was no longer a group of struggling colonies. It had become a strong, coordinated society. Trade flowed easily. Research spread quickly. Technology improved faster with each generation. Every world contributed something special, and every human understood that their future depended on staying united. That the collective wasn't loud or proud. It didn't boast. It didn't send warnings or messages to the rest of the galaxy. It simply worked quietly, steadily, and with purpose. People began calling this growing civilization a hidden empire, not because it was trying to rule others, but because of the incredible things it was building out of sight. Little did they know, the galaxy would one day discover everything they had created, but that moment was still far away. For now, humanity remained hidden, growing in the shadows. building something greater than anyone expected. The humans in the hidden region had survived exile. They had built towns, cities, and a quiet network of colonies. But survival alone was never their final goal. Once they were strong enough to stand without fear, their attention shifted toward something bigger. They wanted to understand the universe around them. They wanted to create technology that didn't just keep them alive, but allowed them to thrive. First sign of this new era came when a group of young engineers suggested improving the old engines that had carried their ancestors into exile. These engines were bulky, slow, and drained energy quickly. People had accepted them for generations because they didn't have the luxury to replace them. But the new generation didn't see them as something sacred. They saw them as a challenge. At first, older citizens were hesitant. They remembered the early struggles. They knew how fragile life could be on distant worlds. But the young humans were full of confidence and curiosity. They didn't carry the same weight of exile, and that allowed them to think boldly. So they created a small workshop inside a mined-out asteroid. The place was dusty and cramped, but it soon became the heart of early human innovation. Engineers worked day and night, studying engine parts, redesigning energy couplings, and trying to create a better propulsion system. Many attempts failed, but each failure taught them something new. Eventually, they created a new type of engine, lighter, cleaner, more efficient. It wasn't a revolutionary leap, but it made travel between colonies faster by almost half. That small victory changed everything. Suddenly, humans realized they were not limited by their old technology. They could build something entirely new, something only they could imagine. News of the improved engine spread quickly across the colonies. Scientists grew excited. Inventors started sharing ideas openly. Workshops on different planets raced to build better prototypes. What began as a small upgrade became a quiet, technological revolution. This new excitement pushed them to look deeper into the ancient ruins they had discovered in the region. These ruins were strange, covered in symbols no one could read, filled with devices whose purpose no one understood. Scientists approached them carefully, not wanting to damage something valuable. They didn't copy or steal ideas. They simply studied the principles behind these ancient designs. One ruined site revealed a strange form of energy storage, something far more efficient than any human battery. The device didn't work anymore, but the structure and materials taught them new ways of storing energy. Another site contained broken pieces of what looked like a navigation device, far smaller and smarter than anything humans had used before. Piece by piece, idea by idea, humans learned. They didn't rush. They didn't try to force miracles. They grew slowly, steadily, in the shadows where no one could interrupt them. As technology advanced, so did their confidence. The collective began planning projects that would have been impossible in the early years of exile. One colony built a research station near a drifting comet to study rare particles. Another colony turned a deep crater into an observatory to track distant stars. A far-off settlement created a floating platform above their planet's storms to monitor atmospheric patterns. Each project strengthened them as a civilization. People felt proud of the work they were doing, not because it would impress the galaxy, but because it belonged to them alone. They didn't need approval from other species. They only needed the joy of creating something meaningful. One of the biggest breakthroughs came from a group of researchers studying gravitational waves. They had noticed something unusual: small distortions around certain regions of space that didn't match natural patterns. At first, they thought it was a sensor error. But as they studied it further, they discovered it was a real phenomenon. The distortions were weak but consistent. This discovery fascinated the researchers. They believed these distortions could be used to create new types of communication or navigation. It took years of experiments, calculations, and failed attempts But eventually, the humans developed a new device, a gravity-based signal emitter. It allowed communication across long distances with almost no delay, far faster than traditional radio methods. This invention became one of the greatest achievements of the Hidden Empire. It allowed the collective to coordinate instantly across entire star systems. Fleets could stay in contact no matter how far they traveled. Colonies could share information without fear of interception. It gave humans something they had never had before: absolute unity over vast distances. But humans didn't stop there. Once they mastered gravity-based communication, they wondered what else they could do with gravitational forces. Scientists started experimenting with controlled gravity fields. Engineers designed machines that could manipulate small pockets of space. They experimented with shielding, propulsion, even construction techniques that used gravity to shape metal. Slowly, this opened doors to new possibilities. Human ships became steadier, smoother, and more efficient. Some ships could now travel through dense asteroid fields without any risk because gravity fields pushed debris aside. Mining stations used gravity to lift heavy loads without large cranes. Even everyday life changed. People used small gravity devices to move equipment, lift materials, and work with incredible precision. The Hidden Empire became a place where innovation never stopped. Communities supported research, not because it was profitable, but because it made them stronger and more connected. Every new idea brought hope. Every solved problem brought unity. But with growth came responsibility. Leaders of the collective began to worry. They had built something powerful: technology, far ahead of what the galaxy believed humans could create. If other species discovered them too early, they might misunderstand or fear this progress. Some might think humans were preparing for conflict, even though the Hidden Empire had no such intention. So the leaders focused on secrecy. Not secrecy born of fear, but secrecy born of wisdom. They created quiet security protocols around research sites. They made sure communication signals remained hidden behind layers of distortion. They built ships with coatings that blended into cosmic dust clouds. They used the natural cover of nebulae and asteroid belts to keep their development invisible. Young humans sometimes questioned why they needed to stay hidden. They hadn't experienced the exile themselves, so they didn't feel the emotional weight of being judged unfairly. But the elders explained gently that the galaxy wasn't ready yet. Other species had long memories, long fears, and long misunderstandings. Until humans were strong enough to stand peacefully without being threatened, remaining quiet was the safest path. Even so, they didn't isolate themselves emotionally. They dreamed of a day when they could travel freely, not as exiles, but as equal members of the universe. Parents told children stories about future friendships with other species. Teachers encouraged students to learn alien languages and understand alien cultures, just in case they one day met them again. This balance, hidden yet hopeful, became the heart of the human identity in the hidden region. Meanwhile, as generations passed, their technology grew even more impressive. One research station on a moon discovered a way to fold small pockets of space to shorten travel routes. It wasn't a jump drive or teleportation, but it reduced travel time between planets dramatically. Engineers tested these folds carefully, making sure they were safe and stable. Eventually, they used them for everyday flights, connecting colonies in ways the early exiles could never have imagined. Another team developed advanced material scanners that could detect rare minerals from orbit. This allowed mining operations to grow efficiently without damaging the environment. Humans valued their new worlds deeply. They didn't want to harm them the way Earth had once been harmed. So they created clean methods of harvesting resources, recycling metals, and restoring ecosystems. People began traveling more often between worlds. Families who had lived apart for decades finally reunited. Festivals became bigger, gatherings livelier, and friendships stronger. Music, art, and culture grew richer with each passing year. It was as if humanity had discovered a second chance to define who they were. But through all this growth, one thing remained unchanged. The galaxy still didn't know they existed. The Council believed humans had disappeared long ago. Old records showed them as a brief species that had failed to adapt. Many younger alien generations had never even heard of humans. Some believed the stories were myths. Others thought humans had returned to their homeworld and collapsed. Meanwhile, the hidden empire kept building, learning, creating. It was becoming something remarkable, something powerful, not because of war or conquest, but because of unity, intelligence, and adaptation. Humans weren't planning to reveal themselves yet. But the day was coming closer, one quiet invention at a time. They were no longer just survivors. They were architects of a future the galaxy wasn't prepared for. And soon, whether the Council wanted it or not, the universe would learn that humanity had not disappeared. They had evolved. For centuries, humans lived quietly in their hidden corner of the galaxy. They built homes, ships, and technology with patience and purpose. They didn't rush. They didn't shout their progress to the stars. They simply lived and grew, trusting that the universe didn't need to know them yet. The hidden empire of humans became a place of calm confidence. People worked, dreamed, created, and raised families without worrying about the outside world. Life felt stable, but life has a way of changing when least expected. That it began with a small event, so small that the humans didn't even notice it at first. A patrol ship from the Galactic Council was traveling farther than usual. Most of these patrols stayed close to known routes, avoiding strange regions full of dust clouds and broken asteroid fields. But this one ship was testing new scanning equipment and followed a faint signal drifting through space. It wasn't a human signal. It was simply a natural pulse from a star. But it led them closer to the hidden region than any outsider had. Come in hundreds of years. The patrol ship didn't expect to find anything unusual. The crew believed the humans were ancient history, a species that had failed to adapt and faded away long ago. Some of them had never even heard the old stories. They thought the journey would be boring. Just another routine scan of quiet space. But as they moved deeper, their scanners picked up something strange. It was faint, almost like a whisper. A small energy trace, steady, organized, not natural. The crew frowned. Nothing in this region should produce such a signal. They followed it, adjusting their course, flying slowly so they didn't damage their ship on any hidden debris. As they approached a dense cloud of cosmic dust, the signal grew stronger. The captain, calm and curious, ordered the ship to move closer. The dust cloud was thick, swirling like a storm frozen in space. Most ships avoided these clouds because they disrupted sensors. But the patrol ship pushed through, little by little, until they reached the other side, and what they saw shocked them so much that no one spoke for several seconds. Far ahead, floating silently among the stars, was a human outpost, one of the many stations the hidden empire used for research and resources. It wasn't large, but it was beautifully built. Smooth metal layers, clean energy shields, soft lights glowing like distant lanterns. It didn't match any known council design. It didn't match old human designs either. It looked advanced, quiet, confident, alive. The patrol crew couldn't believe it. They checked their scanners again and again, convinced it was an error or an illusion. But the readings were clear. The structure was real, and it was definitely made by a civilization. A civilization the council believed no longer existed. The crew panicked at first. Some wanted to retreat immediately. Some wanted to send a message to the council. But they hesitated. What if the structure was abandoned? What if it was from the ancient race whose ruins humans had discovered? They needed proof, not guesses. The captain ordered a slow, cautious approach. Inside the hidden empire, the humans stationed at the outpost finally noticed the incoming ship. At first, they were confused. No human ship would approach in that direction. Then they saw the design of the vessel and felt a wave of shock sweep through the outpost. A galactic council ship had found them. For a moment, the humans froze. They weren't afraid of an attack, but they were afraid of misunderstandings. They had lived hidden for so long. They had hoped to choose their moment of return. But now the moment had chosen them. The humans at the outpost quickly sent messages across the collective. Leaders gathered. Scientists paused their work. Families stood near screens, waiting to hear what would happen. The entire hidden region held its breath. The patrol ship approached slowly, scanning the outpost in detail. The crew murmured among themselves. They saw advanced power cores, cloaking shields, and designs far beyond anything they expected from humans. Some wondered if this was an abandoned base built by another species. Others whispered the impossible. What if the humans survived? Meanwhile, the humans inside the outpost debated whether to reveal themselves or remain hidden. But hiding wasn't an option anymore. The patrol ship was too close. It had seen too much. Remaining silent would only cause fear and suspicion. So, for the first time in centuries, a human voice reached a galactic council ship. It was calm, steady, and peaceful. A simple message. We mean no harm. You have entered our region. Please maintain a safe distance. The patrol crew froze. The voice was unmistakably human. Not a recording. Not an echo from the past. A living human speaking across the stars. The reaction on the ship was a mixture of fear, disbelief, and amazement. They responded carefully. Identify yourself? Humans are believed to be extinct. The humans didn't blame them for thinking that. They simply answered, we survived. And we grew. You are not in danger. The patrol crew stared at their screens, unsure how to process what they were hearing. They had uncovered something enormous, something that would shake the Council's understanding of the galaxy. They asked for permission to approach. The humans declined kindly, but firmly. This region is protected. You may observe from a distance, but do not come closer. The patrol ship obeyed. They weren't foolish. Whoever lived in this hidden region clearly had advanced technology. The council ship didn't want to provoke anything. For several minutes, the patrol and the outpost exchanged simple, cautious messages. No threats. No demands. Just questions and careful answers. Both sides were trying to understand each other. The humans spoke with surprising calmness. Their voices carried quiet confidence, not aggression, but even a simple conversation was enough to change everything. The patrol ship recorded every word, every image, every detail. They analyzed the outpost's technology, its structure, its energy patterns. They couldn't believe how advanced humans had become. It was far beyond what the Council expected from a species that had once struggled to join the galaxy. After gathering as much information as they could, the patrol crew retreated. They didn't want to risk misunderstanding. They knew their leaders needed to hear this. So they turned around and flew back toward Council space, leaving the hidden region behind. But from that moment on, nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. When the patrol ship arrived at a council station, officials rushed to meet them. The moment they played the recordings, the room fell silent. Leaders stared at the images with wide eyes. An outpost stronger than expected. Technology more advanced than many council worlds. Humans alive, organized, and clearly thriving. Panic spread through the council. Old fears resurfaced. Old memories of misunderstandings and conflicts echoed in their minds. Some leaders worried humans might seek revenge. Others feared humans might become a powerful new force that would disrupt the galaxy's balance. Younger officials were confused, They had never expected humans to return at all. News spread quickly across different worlds. Rumors grew faster than facts. Some believed humans had created an unstoppable army. Others thought humans had discovered ancient power sources. Some worlds wanted to make peace. Others wanted to prepare defenses. Meanwhile, back in the hidden region, humans watched the distant stars and understood what had happened. They knew the galaxy would react with fear, curiosity, confusion, and worry. And they knew their time in the shadows was coming to an end. The discovery wasn't part of their plan. They had hoped to reveal themselves when they were ready. But life rarely follows anyone's perfect plan. Humanity had been found. And now they had to decide what would come next. Parents looked at their children with mixed emotions. Elders shared stories of the exile, reminding everyone why caution was needed. Young people whispered excitedly about finally meeting the galaxy. Scientists prepared to secure research. Leaders gathered, planning how to present humanity to the galaxy without causing panic. For the first time in centuries, humans felt the universe watching them again, but they were not afraid. They had built a strong, peaceful civilization. They had learned, grown, and prepared. They weren't the fragile exiles the galaxy once knew. They were ready if the universe approached them with respect. Humanity did not reach out yet. They waited. They watched. They listened. And across the galaxy, every species, small and large, old and young, asked the same question. What will the humans do now? The answer was coming, slowly, carefully, with the same patience that had carried them through exile, because humanity had returned to the galaxy's attention. But they would choose the way forward on their own terms. When the hidden human empire finally decided to reveal itself, it was not done with loud music, flashing lights, or dramatic speeches. It began with a single calm message sent across thousands of systems at the exact same moment. Millions of screens flickered to life. Projectors glowed in cities, stations, and ships. People from every corner of the galaxy paused, unsure if their devices were malfunctioning or if something important was happening. What they saw first was a simple view of a human standing in a quiet, peaceful hall. There was no armor, no weapons, no sign of threat. Just a person with a steady gaze and a voice that reached every listener in the same gentle tone. The human spoke slowly, letting each word settle. They began by telling the truth that the galaxy had forgotten. A long time ago, humanity was pushed out, banished to the edges of space over a misunderstanding that was never solved. No one had come to check on them. No one had cared to know if they survived. Over time, their very existence was erased from official records. Many races grew up learning that humans had failed, disappeared, or simply faded away, but the speaker explained how wrong that belief was. Humans had not vanished. They had not given up. Instead, they had built a new life far away from the Council's attention. They had struggled, suffered, learned, and grown stronger than ever before. And now, after generations of silence, they were returning not as a forgotten group asking for help, but as a civilization that stood on its own feet. Proud of what it had achieved, the message spread quickly and created shockwaves. In many worlds, people stopped what they were doing. Shops closed. Workplaces paused. Entire ships drifted quietly as crews gathered around screens. Some watched with curiosity, some with fear, some with awe. Many simply did not believe what they were seeing. The idea that humans, the same humans once considered weak and disorganized, had built something powerful in secret was unbelievable to many. The human speaker continued, explaining that the hidden empire was not created to attack or dominate the galaxy, but to protect their own people. When they were exiled, they realized no one else would look after them. With few resources and many dangers, they had to grow stronger. They studied the ruins of old civilizations, discovered knowledge that the Council had ignored, and learned how to survive in places other species had abandoned long ago. Their strength had come from necessity, not greed. After the message ended, the galaxy reacted in countless different ways. Some races welcomed the return of humans. They saw this as a chance to build new friendships and create stronger alliances. They admired the determination that humans had shown. Others were cautious and uncertain. They worried that a hidden empire powerful enough to cloak entire star systems might also have the ability to challenge the Council. A few groups panicked, believing that humanity's rise meant their own fall. Council worlds were especially shaken. For centuries, they had ruled large parts of the galaxy with confidence. They had assumed they knew everything happening within their borders. The revelation that a full human civilization had grown in secret right under their noses made them question their own control. Their leaders held emergency meetings. Some wanted to reach out to humans peacefully. Others wanted to block them or create new laws to limit their influence. The Council was divided and nervous. But despite all the fear and uncertainty, one fact stood above everything else. Humanity had returned with dignity. They had not shown weapons or threats. They simply made their presence known. And for many ordinary people across the galaxy, that single choice changed everything. They began to see humans differently, not as victims of the past or as enemies, but as survivors who had earned respect. Meanwhile, across the hidden human worlds, people gathered in their own cities, watching the galaxy's reactions unfold. Many were emotional. Their ancestors had dreamed of the day when they could step back into the wider galaxy without shame or fear. That dream was finally becoming real. Some stood on balconies overlooking illuminated cityscapes, feeling a quiet pride that their parents and grandparents had helped build all this. Others watched the message replay in public halls, talking softly about what it meant for the future. The leaders of the hidden empire met to discuss their next steps. They knew that revealing themselves was only the beginning. The galaxy would want to learn more about them, and they needed to choose carefully whom to trust. They talked about opening trade routes, sharing scientific knowledge, and building communication networks. They also prepared for the possibility that some groups might react with hostility. But overall, they believed the time had come for humans to step into the light and take their place among the stars again. Across the Council's worlds, the news kept spreading. Children asked their teachers who humans really were. Merchants wondered if trading with them would bring new opportunities. Travelers imagined visiting the mysterious regions where the hidden empire had grown. Scientists became excited at the thought of exchanging ideas with people who had mastered advanced technology. Even those who feared humans couldn't deny their curiosity. One moment stood out more than all others. In a large council city, people gathered around a huge display screen in the central plaza. The message of the human speaker appeared again. This time, a voice recording quietly repeated the final words. We were exiled. We were forgotten. But we endured. And now we return not as subjects, but as equals. The crowd listened in silence. Some nodded slowly. Others whispered among themselves. A few simply stared, unable to look away from the simple truth those words carried. A change had begun. It was not loud or sudden. It was quiet, steady, and powerful. People started to question what they had learned in the past. They wondered why no one had checked on the exiled humans. They questioned why the Council had erased so much information. As these questions spread, the old beliefs slowly began to fall apart. Ships from nearby systems started sending peaceful messages to the hidden empire, asking for meetings. Some asked if they could send diplomats. Others asked for cultural exchange. A few simply sent friendly greetings. The humans responded calmly, careful to show no sign of aggression. They knew trust would take time. They knew old wounds would not heal immediately, but they also believed that honesty and patience could rebuild what history had broken. A small transport ship, painted in simple white colors, was chosen for the first official human visit after centuries of exile. This ship was not a war vessel. It carried no weapons. Instead, it carried scientists, teachers, engineers, and peaceful leaders. They wanted the galaxy's first real look at them to reflect what humanity had become: strong, but not cruel, confident, but not arrogant. When the ship landed on a neutral station, a crowd gathered to watch. It was the first time many of them had ever seen a human in person. The humans stepped out slowly, looking around with calm curiosity. They bowed slightly as a gesture of respect, and the crowd, unsure at first, slowly relaxed. Some even waved. The humans smiled faintly and waved back. That moment spread across the galaxy like a gentle wind, calming tensions and opening new conversations. It reminded everyone that beyond all the fear and rumor, humans were still people who laughed, worked, dreamed, and cared just like everyone else. As months passed, more meetings were arranged. More ships traveled. More friendships began. Not everything was perfect. Some groups still resisted. Some politicians still worried. But the general mood shifted toward understanding and cooperation. For the first time in centuries, humanity no longer lived in hiding. They were no longer shadows behind nebula clouds or whispers in old records. They stood openly among the stars, proving that exile had not broken them. It had shaped them into something resilient and remarkable. In the end, their return changed the galaxy not through war or force, but through truth, patience, and the courage to step forward after being forgotten for so long. The hidden empire was no longer hidden, and humanity, once exiled, now walked proudly into a future they had earned with their own hands.